Throughout the previous videos, we've studied the evaluation tree that Genexus creates to establish the order of execution of rules and formulas, as well as the triggering events available to condition the execution of the rules, when the order established by the evaluation tree is not the one we need. In this video, we'll review and consolidate the knowledge required, and we'll see a new triggering event that we haven't discussed yet. The first rules to be triggered are the so-called standalone rules, which are those that don't depend on anything to be executed, or that already have the necessary information provided by the parameters received. After the execution of the standalone rules, the rules and formulas associated with the first level of the transaction that are not conditioned to events are executed, according to the evaluation tree, as the values involved to execute them become available. And then, working at the second level, for each line, the rules and formulas associated with that level of the transaction are executed, with the same criteria. After the user presses confirm, the data travels from the browser to the web server, which runs through the form again as if it were the user moving through each field one by one. It starts with the header, triggering those rules that don't depend on anything else, or those that depend on the mode. For example, the default rule. Then, each field is run through, and the corresponding rules are triggered according to the dependencies found. Once Genexus has finished executing these rules and formulas, a validation stage begins, in which all the referential integrity checks are verified. The concurrency control mechanism checks that the relevant data has not been modified, and it's checked whether the values that were entered for the attributes are within their allowed range. Genexus allows us to condition the rules to be executed immediately before performing this validation, using the triggering event on BeforeValidate, and immediately afterwards using the triggering event on AfterValidate. Let's see an example of use of BeforeValidate. Let's suppose that we want to delete a customer from the system who has an associated invoice. When trying to do so, we'll see this error message, which indicates that it's not possible to perform the deletion because there's a related record in the invoice table. To solve this, we can call a procedure that deletes the related information from the corresponding table, so that there are no data integrity violations when trying to perform the deletion. This procedure must be executed before Genexus starts making the referential integrity checks, which, as we've just mentioned, occurs during the validation stage. So, we'll condition the rule to be executed in the event on BeforeValidate. In this way, when we're about to delete the customer with ID 1, before starting the validation checks, the procedure will be invoked to eliminate the possible invoices associated with that customer. Therefore, when the validation is performed, no more related records are found, and the customer is deleted. In short, the BeforeValidate triggering event occurs right before the information of the instance we're working with, header or line, is validated. That is to say, it'll take place right before the header validation or line validation action as appropriate. Remember that here, all the rules that are not conditioned to any triggering events and that are related with the level will have already been triggered. Also, the triggering event on AfterValidate allows determining that a rule will be executed immediately after the data of that instance has been validated, before it's physically saved in the corresponding table. All the rules that are conditioned to the event on BeforeValidate or on AfterValidate will be triggered at these precise moments. In what order? In the order in which they're written, unless there are dependencies between them, as we've already seen. Next, if the validation did not fail, and the recording corresponded to an insertion, the rules associated with the first level of the transaction that have before insert triggering event will be executed. If the recording corresponded to an update, the rules associated with the first level of the transaction that have BeforeValidate triggering event will be executed. And if the recording corresponded to a deletion, the rules associated with the first level of the transaction that have BeforeDelete triggering event will be executed. The header data will be recorded in the corresponding table. And then the rules associated with this first level will be executed that have onAfterInsert event if the recording corresponded to an insertion, onAfterUpdate if the recording corresponded to an update, and onAfterDelete if the recording corresponded to a deletion. If the transaction is a two-level transaction, after recording the header, the rules and formulas of the second-level attributes that don't have an associated triggering event will be executed. And afterwards, this will happen for each line. Validation. So all the rules that are conditioned to BeforeValidate and AfterValidate events involving attributes of the second level will be triggered. And recording of the line. So all the rules that are conditioned to the events BeforeInsert or BeforeUpdate or BeforeDelete and AfterInsert or AfterUpdate or AfterDelete involving attributes of the second level will be triggered. Next, the rules with triggering event onAfterLevel to do or evaluate something right after running through a certain level will be triggered. If there's another grid, that is, another level, the same thing that was done for the first grid will be repeated, and the onAfterLevel will also take place, but of this other level, and so on until the last grid is completed. After having executed all the operations explained so far, a commit will be performed, which will consolidate in the database the header data and all the lines of the transaction. We have the onBeforeComplete event to execute rules immediately before the commit, and onAfterComplete, which corresponds to the moment immediately afterwards. Learning the order in which the rules in a transaction are executed, the triggering events which are available to assign to them, the exact moment when they're triggered, and what actions take place before and after each triggering event is all very important, because this knowledge is essential to be able to program the transaction's behavior correctly.